Penal Substitutionary Atonement. For generations, Western Christianity has held the idea that God's justice required the slaughter of Jesus to appease his righteous, volatile rage. Today we're going to compare this transactional blood payment view of atonement with three other very different ways to understand the cross. I'm David. Welcome to our third place, a sanctuary to help you move past the spiritual wasteland of dogmatic control and reconstruct a rational, open-hearted path forward. Agree or disagree, you are completely safe to ask questions here. Let's start with the traditional view most of us were handed. In the traditional view, salvation is a celestial lawsuit. Humanity broke God's law, incurring an infinite debt. Because God's retributive justice demands punishment, Jesus stepped in as a substitute to take the violent execution we deserved, satisfying the Father's wrath. This forces you into impossible mental gymnastics. You're loved, but only because a lethal debt has been extracted first. It turns the Creator into an angry accountant holding a blood-stained ledger. I didn't grow up with that weight. When I first encountered the blood payment view as a young man, it shocked me. It always felt like human legalism projected onto the divine. I recently enjoyed reading New Testament scholar Bart Ehrman's research in Love Thy Stranger. Ehrman exposes a glaring paradox in the traditional view. He points out that if a judge demands full payment from a substitute before letting someone go, no debt was actually forgiven. It was simply collected. True forgiveness, by Ehrman's definition, means releasing the debt scot-free. In the Synoptic Gospels, he suggests that Jesus never preaches a transactional atonement. Instead, Jesus teaches that God forgives freely upon genuine repentance. Like the Father running to embrace the prodigal son without requiring the pound of flesh that the older brother clearly expects will be demanded. But this raises a major question. If Jesus taught free forgiveness, why is the Bible full of temple sacrifices? And this is where we turn to Professor David Moffitt from the University of St Andrews in his book Rethinking the Atonement. By examining the mechanics of Leviticus alongside the book of Hebrews, Dr. Moffitt shatters the courtroom model with two historical facts. In the entire Old Testament sacrificial system, not a single animal was ever killed on the altar. The altar had a perpetual fire burning on it. It was physically impossible to butcher an animal inside a furnace. Slaughter happened outside the sanctuary. The altar was not an execution block. It was a table of presentation where a clean gift of life was brought after the fact to maintain a covenant relationship. He also points out the myth of transferring sin to the sacrifice. In Leviticus, the only animal that ever carried human sin was the scapegoat. And the scapegoat was never sacrificed. It was banned from the temple, sent out into the wilderness instead, away from the presence of God, because it was defiled. The animals brought to the altar were pure, clean gifts of life. As Dr. Moffitt argues, the crucifixion was the slaughter outside the camp. The true moment of atonement happened at the ascension, when the living, resurrected Jesus presented his transformed humanity before the Father. This is where Emanuel Swedenborg brings all these pieces together. As Ehrman does, Swedenborg explicitly rejects the idea that an angry father punished the son. He writes that God is justice itself, love itself, and mercy itself. And where these attributes exist, there is no retribution, thus no retributive justice. Where Swedenborg agrees with Moffitt, the cross was not a legal payment to appease God. The cross was the climactic spiritual temptation through which Jesus glorified his human nature, uniting it with the divine. Salvation is not a celestial contract, but an organic rescue mission. Sin isn't a legal crime that makes God angry, it's an internal spiritual imbalance. Swedenborg defines redemption as the Lord conquering the hells, breaking the overwhelming power of spiritual darkness so human free will could be restored. Atonement is at-one-ment. It's not about changing God's view of us, it's about aligning our lives with God's love. This is the process of regeneration. Like the scapegoat, self-centeredness doesn't provoke divine anger, it simply drives us out of the warmth of divine love. Salvation is the patient, lifelong tuning of our heart and mind back into alignment with a God who would never consider turning his back on us. If you've walked away from the blood contract view of God, you haven't lost your spirituality. You've just outgrown a human legal system that was too small for the actual breathtaking scale of divine love. When you compare these four views, the courtroom, Ehrman's free forgiveness, Moffitt's temple gifts, and Swedenborg's concept of regeneration, which one lands closest to your own journey? If you're navigating this transition, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching.